joining us for our spring lunch and learn. Today's topic is choosing resilience, the secret to having a positive attitude. I'm Angela. I'm a senior HCM consultant here with Dominion, and on behalf of those of us at Dominion and our co-host at PAC Consultants, we just want to welcome you and welcome our speaker. The speaker today is Dew Tinnin. She has 25 years experience in sales. She's been a sales coach for 15 years and is the founder of Skillway, whose goal is to help you crush your goals and love what you do. So if any of you have heard Dew speak before, you know we are in for a treat. You cannot listen to Dew and not be impacted. She's amazing. So I'm excited for today. One little fun fact about her is in her time, I know you didn't know I was going to do this. In her time in college at Concordia, she was the Raspberry Festival Queen. And what was the name of that other Aquatennial Princess? So if you know Dew, again, she's not a tutu dresses and crown kind of girl. So I want to see pictures. And I hear you still have these crowns, right? Yes. So you need to share pictures because this is, again, if you know Dew, that's not her style. So I would love to see that. So anyways, thank you again for joining us. We're so glad you're here and help me in and welcoming Dew up to the front.
Hi, everyone. I love that you brought that in there because there is all sorts of fun facts when I start talking, and I tend to overshare. If any of you know me, you know that like as soon as we sit down and we start talking, I tend to overshare. And so I love sharing this story of how I have come to today. I am number 7 of 8 children. And so I very much grew up in a family where everything was passed down from my siblings to me. And in fact, that's where my nickname came from. So Dew is not my birth name. It is my nickname because if I ever received anything that was mine originally, I put my initials on it, DEW. And so that's where my nickname came from, was because apparently I had to claim everything that was mine. My younger brother has Down syndrome, and so I was fighting for the underdog my entire life. And that also taught me a lot about resilience and how to have a good attitude about everything. I'm a Gen Xer by age. However, my parents are from the post-war generation. Again, I'm number 7 of 8. And my siblings are either boomers or Gen Xers. And then I was raised with my millennial nieces and nephews. So I'm a conglomeration of all of them. I'm a mess. And what ends up happening is, I stand up and greet you with a handshake when we meet. I answer the door when the doorbell rings. And so people get a little bit freaked out about how I tend to have all of the generational things in my style. I started Skillway in 2017 after spending my entire career in sales. And one of the things that I did while I was growing my career in sales is that I had built my entire career on building deep relationships. And at Skillway, we help you crush your sales goals and love what you do. Now, I know that the room isn't full of salespeople, but I am curious, how many salespeople do I have in the room? Oh, a good amount. That's fantastic. How many of you are business owners? All right, business owners. How many of you typically just don't raise your hand? Okay. All right. See what? There we go. There we go. Because that does matter. When we started Skillway, we are a sales coaching organization, and we coach and we train sales people, business owners, and sales executives all over the country on how to grow their business. We are not industry specific. However, we only work with organizations who are in the relationship-based sales space. So as we talk about resilience today, this is a topic that most people have to pay attention to in some way or another. But how this topic became one of Skillway's specialties is what we call our 3 E's. And our 3 E's is what we call our recipe for success, because to be a well-rounded business professional, there are a couple of things that you should have in your toolbox. And the first E that we call is our enthusiasm. And this is all about your attitude, because sales isn't just a numbers game. Sales is keeping your head in the game. And so you really have to work on your attitude. This is where we say we believe that attitude is everything. The second E that we talk about a lot at Skillway is expertise. And this is either your sales skills or your leadership skills. And the reason that we say that your expertise matters is that self-development is what takes you and your business to the next level. And it's wildly important. And the third area that we spend a lot of time talking about is efficiency. This is time management. How many of you would like to be a little bit more efficient with your time? All of us, right? Every single one of us would like to be more efficient with our time because either you run the day or the day runs you. And that is so critical in everything that you do, that you are paying attention to how you're spending your time. And so as we looked at all of the topics that we could talk about today with all of you, we decided we wanted to talk about resilience and how do you have a better attitude? Because quite frankly, choosing resilience is a choice. And it's not always the easiest choice. It's not always the choice that people just look at and say, this is going to be my natural answer. Some people are born with resilience. I was naturally born a very resilient person. Being number 7 of 8, I had to fight for food. I'm an incredibly fast eater because if I didn't finish what was on my plate, my brother's fork was coming for it before I could even have a chance. So I was born very resilient. Not all my siblings were. Sometimes I'm amazed that all of us were raised by the same parents because there is a significant difference between all of us and in the way that we choose resilience. And so as we go through today, I'm going to share with you 7 ways to become more resilient. But the first thing I want to share with you is the definition of resilience, and that is the capacity to recover quickly from difficulties or toughness. That is your first opportunity to say, how can I become more resilient? So as we talk about the 7 ways to be more resilient, we're going to start with the first one, which is the easiest one, and that is to just choose resilience. You all have just a handout in front of you. It's just a piece of paper. It does have all of the 7 ways on there, but if you have an idea that you want to jot down and take some ideas down, please feel free to take additional notes today. So as you think about how resilient you are, I want you to ask yourself a question. When you face some level of adversity, how quickly do you bounce back? Does it take you a minute to bounce back? Or is it something where you're like, no big deal, I'm just going to keep on moving? I'd love to see a show of hands. How many of you feel like you bounce back quickly? That not a lot bothers you? All right, how about so on the other side? How many of you feel like it takes me a minute to become a little bit more resilient? Those are usually the half-handers. Did you see that? It's like you're not like, heck yeah, I'm resilient. I'm resistant to resilience. But thank you, I appreciate even the half-handers. Because choosing resilience or being resilient is definitely a challenge for some people. But regardless of where you fall, you can learn how to be more resilient. You can actually learn how to bounce back quicker by practicing a couple of things. So I want you to give yourself permission today as we walk through the 6 other ways on how can you be a little bit more resilient. So let's jump into number 2. One of the best ways that you can be more resilient is by planning out your morning. Most challenges happen with something happening in the morning that you didn't expect. Your dog poops in the kitchen. That usually sets you off in some sort of way that you were not expecting your day to go, right? And I'm not saying that you're gonna plan cleaning up after your dog in the morning, but if you are not booking every single minute from the time you wake up until the time that you leave, it's not as big a deal when you do have to do something. So there are a couple of things that you can do when you plan out your morning. And The first thing is instead of calculating out, I have to leave the house at 7:25, therefore I have to get up at 6:25, and that doesn't include a workout, and that doesn't include this, and oh, do I have to wash my hair today, right? Because that is a legit calculation we have to plan into our morning. Of what are you doing? Instead, get up at the same time every day. Waking up at the same time every day is one of the best ways to set yourself up for success, because you are eliminating the variability of the challenges that come. One of the studies that we have read and that we share at Skillway is that the average self-made millionaire gets up 3 hours before their workday begins. That is so that they can have time for themselves, time to read, time to exercise, time to not rush, and really move through the morning in a really great way. So look at your day and say, what would be a good time for me to wake up? There's two things that we teach at Skillway on why you should plan out your morning. And the first one is it can set the tone for the day. When you set the tone of, I'm in a hurry, I'm rushing, I need to do X, Y, and Z, you're just in a rush, and everything goes wrong, including traffic. Versus on the other side, when you plan for your morning and you just say, I got plenty of time to do everything that I need to do. And if I need to make a tweak or a change, it's not that big a deal. But what you can do is you can actually start tracking how many ways you win first thing in the morning. We have 5 ways that we say you can win before you even leave your bedroom. And that is, don't hit snooze, make your bed, brush your teeth, do some level of exercise, whether it's squats or jumping jacks or sit-ups or whatever, and then drink 16 ounces of water. You could do 5 things literally before you leave your bedroom that set your day up for winning immediately. The second reason why we say that you should really plan out your morning is because self-development is best first thing in the morning. Now, I'm not saying that whether or not you're a night owl or an early bird matters, but typically your mind is freshest right when you wake up in the morning. So set the tone for the day and do a little bit of self-development first thing in the morning, because then you think about those ideas all day long. So whether you listen to an audiobook or whether you sit down and read a few pages or listen to a podcast on your way to the office, thinking about some of those ideas throughout the day are a great way to set yourself up. And that can happen right first thing in the morning. And then when challenges come, they're no big deal. They're no big deal. You can just have a great day. So the third thing on being more resilient is exercising. Now, studies have shown that you should exercise about 150 minutes a week, which calculates out to be about 30 minutes a day. And I have never met a better therapist than the pavement. And it doesn't mean you have to go for a run and hit 5 miles every single day. Even if you only walked out your front door for 10 minutes, turned around and came back. That is a great way to just clear your mind rather than going from your bedroom to your car to the office, and you don't even know if we have a beautiful blue sky or not because you haven't even breathed fresh air yet. And really looking at it and saying, what do I need to do? But I want to challenge all of you, because 30 minutes is 2% of your day. And most of us say that the reason we don't exercise is because what? We don't have time. So all I'm asking you to do is make a change with 2% of your day so that you have enough time to walk 15 minutes in one direction and come back in the other direction. And that will change the trajectory of your entire day just by having some sort of way to let things go. In fact, when you have a challenge that has happened at work, instead of telling your neighbor about it or calling your coworker or calling your manager or your boss, go for a quick walk around the parking lot. And then with a clear head, try and solve the issue or the challenge that you are facing when you're in the parking lot. And then when you come back into the office to deal with it, you are typically a little bit more clear-headed. So hit the pavement instead of just turning into it being a little bit more of gossip. And make sure that you have an accountability partner of some sort. If you want to start exercising, one of the best things that you can do is tell somebody about it. You are much more likely to achieve your goals when you tell somebody about it. How many of you have ever run a marathon? No one, a half? Yes. All right. So we do have a couple. A half. Okay, good. Y'all are crazy. Anyway, one of the things that I have learned is that you more than likely told someone you were going to run a half or a full marathon, right? And that accountability is much more likely what held you accountable to achieving it. So whenever you want to change something in your life, tell somebody about it. And that starts with exercise. Another thing is that if you have kids and you're saying, but I have kids, I can't do it, take your kids with you. Make it a family activity, even if it's bike riding or if you're pushing them in a stroller. Making sure that you involve your kids in some sort of way and don't let them be an excuse. Have them see how you're doing it. Number 3 is to invest in really good shoes. You spend a third of your life in bed and a third of your life on your feet. So make sure that you're investing in some good shoes and stay hydrated. The recommendation for water is to take your body weight, cut it in half, and that's how many ounces of water you should take or intake every single day. And that's a really good calculation. That's why if you start the day first thing in the morning with a tall glass of water, you've got a good chunk of it, done right away. And then remember, 30 minutes is 2% of your day. Number 4 is, and then here's my favorite quote. I can throw in the towel or I can use it to wipe the sweat off my face. And that's a great one about exercise. Number 4 is to practice good self-talk. Self-talk matters significantly because you talk to yourself more than you talk to anyone else. And as Earl Nightingale said, you are what you think about. So if you think about how busy you are or how stressed out you are or how you're never going to get this done or you're never going to close this deal or you're never going to lose this weight, all of that negativity just piles on top of each other. Now, I'm not saying that you just have to start convincing yourself of the opposite, but really paying attention to how are you talking to yourself. Because by changing your self-talk, you can actually change the way that you are setting yourself up for success. Physically, mentally, financially, spiritually, all of these different areas really start with some good positive self-talk. Just like resilience, some people are born with it. There are some people who are naturally born more positive. They lean on the positive side of things, which is quite true. But just like resilience can be learned, so can positive self-talk. So here's an activity I want you to try. When you get back to your office today, your house, whatever it is, I want you to sit in your vehicle for just 30 to 60 seconds, and I want you to think about what did you say to yourself in the vehicle. Were you stressed out about the meeting that you have to have? Were you beating yourself up about how you're going to be late to your next meeting? How are you talking to yourself when you are completely alone? Or you can do this test. When you got out of the shower this morning and you were standing in front of the mirror before you did anything else, what did you say to yourself in the mirror? And, as you're looking at yourself in all of your glory, were you beating yourself up or were you being nice to yourself? And those are some really great ways to determine how your self-talk is. Are you being kind to yourself when you are completely alone? So when you face adversity, how are you addressing it? Are you addressing it with saying, of course I got a flat tire, or of course fill in the blank is happening? Or are you like, all right, well, I'm gonna be more resilient and I'm gonna deal with this, or I'm gonna have a positive attitude with this, because you really do get to choose how you're going to talk to yourself and what your positive self-talk is. So that leads to number 5, which is to use positive affirmations. How many of you have ever heard of affirmations before or have used them? Awesome. I love affirmations. One of my very favorite stories about affirmations is a former coworker of mine wanted to become a New York Times bestselling author. He didn't know the topic, he didn't know the book, he had no idea what he was going to write. But one of the things he started practicing was he said, I'm a New York Times bestselling author. And he said for 2 years, he laughed every single time he said it because he was like, this is bananas. Like, I don't even have a topic. But that was one of his goals and one of his dreams. When he finally came up with his topic and when he finally started working on his book, one of the things that he did is he knew he had to invest the time and energy into what it takes to be a New York Times bestselling author. So he had done all of the research. He knew all of the books he had to pre-sell, and he knew all of the stats and figures of how unlikely it was going to be for him to become a New York Times bestselling author without being somebody that was in the news or had overcome some sort of incredible thing, but he still practiced, I'm going to be a New York Times bestselling author twice a day, every morning and every night. 5 years later, when his book came out, he was number 2 on the New York Times bestseller list. And I'd share that story because it wasn't because he didn't put in the work. It didn't happen because he just told himself every single morning. But by the time he had written the book, he had already visualized so many times what it was going to look like and what success was going to look like on the other side, that he had already been through all of the hardships. He had already gone through all of the things. And it is amazing what can happen when you just use some positive affirmations to change the trajectory of what you want to do. So an affirmation is typically written in first person, in present tense, using strong words. Now, one of the things I do not recommend is that if you are trying to lose, I'm going to say 50 pounds, that you don't start telling yourself, I weigh 125 pounds. That doesn't necessarily feel right. But one of the things you can do is you can say, I am working towards losing 50 pounds every single day. Like you are in present tense, I am working on it, rather than just saying, I weigh 125 pounds, which isn't going to work because, again, you're going to laugh a little bit at yourself. But you can use affirmations in present tense, still what you're working towards. Some of my favorite affirmations, and the affirmation I say every single morning before my feet hit the floor is, today's going to be a great day. It is absolutely my daily mantra all day long. I have it laminated and hanging in my shower. Like, today is going to be a great day all day. And that's really what I start. And if I don't have a great day when my feet hit the floor, I get up, I get back in bed, and I get out on the other side. Because, something must have just happened in between those couple of minutes. But another one that I've practiced for years is, I'm a morning person. Most of us make excuses on why we hit snooze or why we can't exercise or what we need to do. And it typically is tied to some sort of way of us not being morning people. And so really change the way that you're talking to yourself first thing in the morning. I'm working towards being a morning person. You could say, I don't hit snooze in the morning. Looking at some of those things to really lean towards how can you become a morning person. Another one that I love is, I manage my time effectively. I manage my time effectively is working towards you being in charge of your time and you being in charge of all of the things that you need to do. As a salesperson, a great affirmation is, I prospect every day. One of the reasons that prospecting becomes hard is because we lose the habit by not prospecting every day. Prospecting should be something that you do every single day. And the more days that go by with you in between not doing it, the harder it becomes. So when you just say, I prospect every single day, then you can make it happen. Or one of my other favorites, I get referrals from every person on the planet. That is another one that I love, where you're just like living in this world of abundance. I get referral. Of course I got a referral today. I get referrals from every person on the planet, Sometimes you need to convince yourself that way. Another one is, I'm generous. I am generous with my time. I'm generous with my money. I'm generous with my giving attitude, just I'm generous. It's one of those things that really sets you up for success in business, because there are givers, takers, and matchers in life. And this is one of my favorite books by Adam Grant called Give and Take. And when you are generous, you are always wanting to help other people. And when you help other people, it's going to come back to you. You're not doing it to have things come back to you. You're doing it because it just makes you feel really, really good. And then number 5, my other affirmation I'll share with you today is I'm a great listener. I know we could all improve our listening skills, and the more we spend time listening, the better off we are going to be. So, one of my favorite sales affirmations is, my job is to make a list and to cross people off that list. Some will say yes, some will say no, but I need both to have a great day. Some will, some won't, so what? Who's next, who's next, who's next? And this was an affirmation I said every single day, multiple times a day for years, because I needed to get in the mind frame, or the frame of mind of no's don't destroy my day. I love no's. No's are far better than maybes, because maybes keep you stuck in life, right? Maybes are what keep you paralyzed in, I've got a lead, it's still kind of happening, versus if you just can get them to a yes or a no, how much better your day goes, because maybes keep you stuck. So this is one of my favorite affirmations there. Number 6 is to shrug it off. Now, shrugging it off is when you are dealing with a situation that you have absolutely no control over. Something happened and you get to decide how you're going to deal with it. My husband and I begged my stepson to apply for scholarships. We came up with contests, we came up with ways that we would pay him back, we would give him cash, because any scholarship he got saved us money, right? So we were all about, Spence, please, will you just apply for a couple scholarships? Well, he applied for one. It was a $100 Dr. Pepper scholarship that he didn't get. And one of the things Shane and I had to do was we had to go, oh well. Because sometimes when things are completely out of your control, the best thing you can do is just shrug it off. I learned the shrug it off technique from a former coworker of mine. I lived in Minneapolis for 35 years before moving to Nashville. And one of my coworkers came in one morning just laughing, just absolutely laughing. And he's like, my son is out of control. And I said, what happened? And he goes, well, he went to daycare this morning without shoes on because he's a dinosaur. And I was like, really? As I'm like looking out the window in 0-degree weather, right? And he's like, oh yeah, he thought it was a great idea. You know, he's a dinosaur. Dinosaurs don't wear shoes. You know, he was going to go to school without shoes on today. And I said, how long did it last? And he said, until he got out of the car and had to walk into daycare with no shoes on. And he was just laughing. And I'm like, how come you have such a great attitude about it? And he's like, what can I do about it? You just have to shrug it off. And it was like that moment in my life was such a good teacher, where what he could have done is wrangled the dinosaur to putting on shoes and ruined everyone's morning. Or you wait till your toddler is begging to put on shoes the second their feet hit, the freezing cold pavement. And he had a great day because of it, rather than looking at it and saying, this is what I need to do. And shrugging it off can make things so much easier. And then finally, if you shrug it off and you are just trying to think of every single way to be resilient, the last one I have for you today is to ignore one bad minute. Most oftentimes, when you see somebody with a horrible attitude and you're like, what got into him today? It typically is because of something relatively small. It's usually not because of such a catastrophic event that frustrated or happened to their business or happened in their personal life. Typically, what ended up happening was they just had a bad minute. They got caught off in traffic. their dog pooped in the kitchen, or something relatively minor happened. And sometimes you have to let it go. I remember the morning very well still today because I think of it often. When I was, I don't know if any of you are also a camel when you're going to your vehicle in the morning and you're only making one trip. There's no reason to make two trips. Everything comes in one. And I had my blueberry smoothie in one hand and my coffee in the other, along with all of the bags that I was packing to bring with me to take to work. And I reached into my vehicle with my blueberry smoothie to put in the cup holder, and guess what? I missed the cup holder. And I don't know if you can imagine what happens in the dungeon between your seats, but that's where the blueberry smoothie went. And I did my best to clean it up as quickly as I could off of my beautiful tan Camry carpet. And it didn't work, and I regretted it later when I had to really clean it up. But I let that blueberry smoothie completely destroy my day. It was one thing after another. Of course, my blueberry smoothie spilled. Of course, I was late to the office. Of course, my typical parking spot wasn't available. I just absolutely let it destroy my day. And when I got home that night and I was telling Shane about it, I realized that I didn't have a bad day. What I had was a bad minute. And sometimes we let one bad minute completely destroy our day. Now, I don't want to necessarily say that we don't have bad days. There are lots of things that we go through in life, and there are lots of things that happen to us that really do challenge us. I remember one morning, I go for anywhere from 3 to 5 miles every single morning for a walk. And one morning, I was absolutely freezing. It was in Nashville. It was about 16 degrees, and I was irritated that I was out on a walk. And I was having kind of like a I'm out here but not enjoying it moment. And as I was walking down the street, I live in the nation, so I live in the city. And as I was walking down the street, there were some officers who were standing around a person. And I was like, that's interesting. And as I rounded the corner and came up to it, I realized that a homeless person had died during the night. And my morning changed significantly at that moment because I was complaining being in a nice warm jacket, being in warm shoes. I was choosing to be outside. And I remember walking past the situation and realizing what I had just seen, and I started crying. I mean, I beat myself up for being so silly or so selfish or all of the things that I was happening. And then I remembered, I can't believe I have to go back to my office right now, and the training topic I was going to teach at 9 a.m. was resilience. And I was like, oh my God, how am I going to talk about resilience today? Because I had just had, for all intents and purposes, a pretty awful morning, realizing and seeing and going through this and going through the challenges that I was realizing. And after the training, Ashley asked if I could stay on the call. So I did the training, I led the conversation. It was very similar to the talk that I'm having with all of you. And she was like, Dew, I know that we're supposed to be more resilient, but you do realize that being resilient is just easier for you, don't you? And I said, that's interesting. Why do you say that? And she's like, I've never seen you have a bad day. I've never seen you have a bad moment. I've never seen you have a challenge at all. How do you think that we can implement this in our life? It was very ironic that I got to then share what happened to me that morning. And what I said is, it doesn't necessarily mean that I'm not having a bad day. It just means for an hour, I am compartmentalizing it and I am setting it aside because I need to be on. And as business owners and as salespeople and as business professionals, sometimes we just have to fake it. And we can deal with that stuff in a few minutes, right? Like I dealt with that, well, for years because I'm still telling the story. But realizing how sometimes you just have to be, all right, let's go. And I can fake it for an hour. I can have a great day and you're not going to know it. And then you can deal with it later. So I'm by no means saying that that morning was one bad minute. It was a really, really bad morning. And I still hate that that's what I happened to see. But one of the things that I want to talk about is that I have an invitation for all of you to put this all together and decide that you're going to choose to be a little bit more resilient. And that it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to pretend that things aren't going your way. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're just always going to be rainbows and unicorns, because by God, I would love to live a full-time life of unicorns and rainbows. But really looking at it and saying, you know what? I'm choosing resilience today. Just right now, just for this meeting, just for this hour, I'm going to suck it up. I'm going to put it together, and I'm going to have an awesome attitude going into this. I'll deal with, the poop in the kitchen later. I'll deal with the poop in the kitchen later. I want to open it up for questions as we now close out today. And what kind of thoughts or ideas have come up, or what do you want to share? Or do any of you have any questions on resilience? Kelly.
How do you wrestle with being authentic when you're not, like, that authenticity versus being confident on the daily face of being resilient, knowing that there's all this other stuff going on? Like, where's that line of being authentic and choosing?
If you have the attitude of I'm authentic all the time, then it doesn't come across as you are now faking it. So what I would rather do is say practice the authenticity full time so that when the challenge does come up, it's a little bit easier. One of the things that I do recommend, I do love the fake it till you make it, but as Amy Cuddy teaches, fake it till you become it. All right, that's what Amy Cuddy teaches. And I love that attitude because sometimes you can't necessarily look at it and say, hey, you know what? I want to be as confident as Dew, Well, then in a situation where you're walking into a room, how do you think Dew would walk into this room knowing that there's stuff that's happening in her, in her personal life as well? And what you do is you start visualizing what would somebody with confidence act, or what would somebody with a really great attitude do, or how can I be really authentic and be 100% present in this moment right now. Because one of the other things that I've learned through that, Kelly, that I'll share is that actually being present in the moment is a relief from thinking about all of the stress that's happening outside the room. So being present in the room today gives you an hour break where you don't have to deal with it because you can't. So just put your phone on silent and you'll deal with it in an hour. Anyone else have a question? Yeah.
How would you encourage resiliency in someone else when you need them to perform and things are not going their way, but you don't have time for a 60-minute lunch and learn to walk them through?
a 60-minute lunch and learn. Yes. So the question is, how do we handle it when somebody has to then come back to you and you're basically looking at somebody else who could use a little bit more resilience in their life? And the thing that I say is, it's amazing how often that is what we want to do, is we have negativity in our life and it's that person. Or we have a challenge in our life and it's that person. It is not feeding into the negativity that they try to take you down into. My mother, I have a very calculated relationship with my mother because she's the most negative person I've ever met in my entire life. And so I have to prepare myself every single time I'm going to be dealing with my mom or having a conversation with my mom of like, okay, I'm not going to let her suck me in. I do. I like pump myself up. Like I see, Joan pop up on my phone and I'm like, all right, you can do it. You can do it. You can do it. I'm like, Joan's not sucking me in. But then really looking at it and then saying like, instead I'm going to be the change that I want to see in them and not go down the negativity train. Be like, wow, that's really tough. I'm sorry that you're facing that this morning. Instead of, oh my God, tell me more. And, like try and stop it as quickly as possible rather than feeding it. And then introduce them to Dew, because she can do a 60-minute lunch hour. Laura, what was your question?
It was about the positive affirmation.
Yeah.
And like you hit a nerve with me when you said I'm a morning person, because I am not a morning person, and I thought about making that an affirmation, and I don't even want to say it because I don't want to not hit the snooze button. So how do you use positive affirmations when you have like that much
Resistance?
Yeah.
So how do you deal with not hitting snooze and turning yourself into a morning person?
Yeah, I don't want to go for a walk at 6.
Yeah, you do. Go for a walk later. Go for a walk later. So it's really funny because I will also say that if anybody from teenage Dew's life would ever hear me say that I don't hit snooze, they'd laugh, or that I was a morning person, because I was. I loved a 9-minute snooze nap. I mean, you can get some serious sleep in 9 minutes, but you really can't. All you're doing is almost falling back asleep and then abruptly waking back up, right? So somebody once told me that only lazy people hit snooze. And I will tell you that just destroyed me, because I was like, I am not lazy, you know? So my affirmation that I said for years was, I leap out of bed and attack the day with gusto while the lazy man hits snooze. And that changed it for me, because every single day when my alarm went off, I turned it off. I didn't even allow myself to hit snooze on it. I just hit stop, because that's the only thing that I was going to do. Because you're not getting more sleep in 9 minutes. Instead, just set your alarm for 9 minutes or 18 minutes or 27 minutes later and get some good sleep for another half hour. And then choose what time you want to wake up and then get out of bed at that time. I leap out of bed each morning and attack my day with gusto while the lazy man hits snooze. Because I didn't want to be lazy. All right, anybody else? Angela, it is back to you. Thank you.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me okay? Okay. Well, thank you everyone for joining us. Dew, that was amazing. I told you all it'd be a treat, right? She's amazing. Thank you. Hopefully you all took as vigorous notes as I did. And a lot of good information, so thank you. So next I want to introduce our co-sponsor, PAC Consultants. We have Connie here, and before I do, I just want to say Connie has worked with us for a couple years now, has been such a great partner with Dominion Payroll. I've known her on a personal level and on a business level, and she's been great to work with. So thank you, Connie, for co-hosting, and please come up here.
I'm actually not going to use that, if that's okay. Thanks, Angela. That's a tough act to follow. So thank you for that. I enjoyed it very much. So I'm Connie Davis. This is my colleague, Brandon Kelly. I actually am the owner of PAC Consultants. Started the business a few years ago, and we specialize in insurance benefits. And do I need to stand in here?
Yes.
Okay. Oh, sorry. So I started the business a few years ago. We specialize in insurance benefits, major medical, dental, vision, short-term and long-term disability, as well as life insurance. We also do Aflac products. We actually do Dominion Tennessee's benefit offering. A couple of things to know about PAC Consultants is that we actually offer a personalized approach to your employee benefits. We're going to sit down with you as your benefit specialist, do a discovery, actually figure out what are your goals and objectives for benefits. Sometimes it's recruiting. You want to use benefits as a recruiting strategy. Sometimes it's network. Maybe you've had a bad experience with your current broker, or maybe your price has increased, steadily over year, and you just live with it. So our approach is to come in and actually identify those areas where we can help. The next thing is really, if you deal with a broker right now or a firm that charges you an admin fee, we actually don't charge that. So you don't pay us anything. We get paid from the carrier that you choose. And so from our perspective, it's all about education and training of your employees, making sure that they understand their benefits, because insurance is tough, even if you're an insurance person. We want to support you not only through your open enrollment, but also through your claims experience. A lot of times we hear, Brandon and I always hear, we can't get a claim paid, and our HR department is stressed because they're actually trying to spend their time getting that. That's our job. Our job is to make sure that we handle those things for your organization. And then, of course, making sure that you get the best network and the price that we identified in the beginning of the process. So again, thank you for having us. I appreciate the time. I have some brochures and some little giveaways if you'd like to take those. And again, thanks to Dominion for being such a great partner.
Well, thank you everyone again for being here today. We're so glad for those of you online and in person for joining us. Hopefully you felt that that was beneficial. Feel free to stick around and network and talk with each other. No rush to get out the door, and have a great day.